All of our culture and tradition is only a generation away that we may not have it anymore. Just one generation can change a whole entire community, a whole entire tribe by something that one generation does or does not do. And to me, that's part of the food that we share together and the coming together as a community to support one another. That's who we are. That's who we are as Choctaw people.
We're looking for, this size right here. And it's thin and it's round and it's really tender. But when they start getting heads like them tall ones, it's hard to cook and it's tough. I think it's going to be passed on to the newer generations because they're more interested now, just like this little girl over here. She's learning a lot of things from the family, and she already knows what these are.
Many tribes ate onions in a variety of forms for a variety of reasons. Tribes as diverse as Kiowas, Apache people, up north, Ojibwa people. In fact, wild onions had such a significance at one time for Ojibwa people that Chicago is actually named after wild onions.
No, I don't really. But I see like what you're saying on these getting too big.
You know, food and hymns, those are important. You know, our spiritual practices and what we eat on a daily basis, those are so much of who we are as a people. No matter what group you're talking about around the world, those things are very intrinsically part of who we are, so much so that we don't usually sit back and analyze it and think about the whys. But I can imagine in the same sorts of ways that the hymns got people through on the trail, that seeing some remnants of home here, seeing something familiar in the spring, particularly onions, that sign of new life, you know, in the spring, the first thing that's coming up. You're seeing perch starting to run, the poke salad's getting ready, and the onions are getting ready. That had to make people feel some sort of comfort that there could be some kind of continuity in the midst of all of that destruction, something that was still familiar to families.
Primarily, Five Civilized Tribes has this event for wild onions, dinners and so forth, which brings people together and brings people of all different tribal groups together for fellowship and so forth. And it is a part of who we are. I mean, it is seasonal, it is a part of who we are, and we have good memories with it. For many of the people who come, they come and they see other people they know, and they've been to wild onion dinners with them, in my case, probably over 50 years, you know, in some place, sometime. So it's quite an experience for us. For most of us who do participate and who've been a part of it, and where onions was a part of our culture, it is a way of touching the past.
Iya-hi-yo, we tane-ho, iya-hi-yo, tane-ho, 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 iya-hi-yo, we tane-ho, iya-hi-yo, tane-ho,
Can you come look, see if there's enough eggs and you want more?
Just like the Choctaw Nation, a lot of nations were threatened with the loss of federal recognition during the termination era. Wild onions, it may seem like there's a little plant, here's this little practice that we have, right? But cultural distinctiveness is actually one of the markers the BIA uses for federal recognition. If tribes do not maintain cultural distinctiveness, literally, they can be terminated by the U.S. government and lose that sovereign nation status. So there's so many ways in which that can happen. I see a future, and I'm going to speak a future, where there are plenty of Choctaw language speakers, where there are people who can think in Choctaw, which is a quite different phenomenon than thinking in English. There's a whole wealth of knowledge there that's embedded in those languages. There's a wealth of knowledge embedded in our ways. Sometimes seems simple on the surface, going out and picking this plant. But the science and the knowledge that's behind that is so much more vast than it appears on the surface. And I think those things are just crucial to survival, not just literal survival, but survival as culturally distinct people groups, our relatives, and who we are, maintaining that.
Way high.